Liar. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Well, okay. It's Friday, November 27th, 2020. This is our second attempt at getting the show started. We were about a minute or so into the show when all the power went out everywhere. And, well, I wasn't real sure when it was coming back, but it was relatively quick. But the whole house went out. And on my way down to check the circuit breakers to see whether it was just us, and I didn't get a chance to look outside and see whether everybody's power was off. But I don't know. Feels like the whole neighborhood might have gone off and then back on again. So, what the hell? We'll just go on as if, well, not as if nothing had happened, but as if the last 10 minutes don't count. So we'll have a 10-minute foreshortened show for you today, unless the power goes out again. Who knows what's going on out there. I think everything will be okay. It made me think again about how we really should have some sort of battery backup for the show here. Even though every time I think about it, I think about how much it would really cost to invest in something like that, because I'd need something for all the computers and something that would give the everything enough juice to run for up to 2 hours, of course. But all the computers, at least some of the peripheral equipment as well. And then I need another one downstairs to power the router for the cable internet, etc. So, you know, it's like 3 units that we'd need for these things, and each one capable of running things for 2 hours. I don't know. I don't know anything about battery backups and how to estimate whether or not one is large enough to run things for 2 hours. They have all sorts of metrics that they print on the box, but they're contradictory. Anybody who's an expert in battery backup who feels like contacting us, please go ahead and do so. All right, let's roll as if, as if we didn't care about being disrupted for 2 minutes. When we started, maybe we were interrupted by, who knows, the president's henchman. Of course, we were going to launch into some discussion of how ridiculous he looked yesterday. Maybe he didn't want that news to go out. I don't know. Came and he cut my power, but then he put it back on because he's incompetent at all of his plotting. So that's the only way I could make it work. Anyway, yeah. He, I guess, was answering reporters' questions following a holiday message to the troops, except for the fact that the troops were all groggy. I guess they got, I don't know whether they had an audience that they forced out there by waking them up in the middle of the night, but it was Thanksgiving, of course, yesterday, and everyone was stuffed full of holiday meals, as I assume they do even in the military. We got all kinds of pictures of those photo ops from years past. That evidence, unless that's something Trump secretly cut off for them and didn't tell anybody because he loves the troops so much. But anyway, apparently he scheduled this thing in what was the afternoon or evening for us here in the Eastern time zone on Thanksgiving Day, but spoke to troops deployed in, I think, Afghanistan, Kuwait, Iraq, Bahrain, I can't remember exactly. Bahrain was one of them, I think. But all Middle Eastern deployed troops that he had decided to speak to. But it was about 1:15 in the morning for them when he did that. Yeah, Bahrain and Kuwait, for whatever reason, those two bases were the ones he addressed. It wasn't like he was speaking to the military worldwide, in which case you'd have trouble with time zones anyway. But according to Aaron Rupar, who was following the story, that as Jennifer Jacobs was reporting it, Trump had been golfing earlier in the day. I didn't even notice that. Missed that entirely as I spent the day preparing for Thanksgiving and just generally taking care of the show and the post-show production and getting everything prepared. Anyway, he snuck out to the golf course, and that would have been, of course, the more reasonable hour, as Aaron puts it, for him to address the troops overseas. Would have been a nice post-Thanksgiving meal address for them, but no, he was busy with matters of state, like golfing. Came back and said, I'll do the message to the troops when I feel like it, except when he felt like it was 1 a.m. for them. So I'm curious about whether they rousted anybody from bed in order to listen in or to provide an audience for this message. And then, of course, the optics of it, which ordinarily don't matter a great deal, except for those on the other end of the video feed. And it may have looked fine on the other end of the video feed for all we know. But there were some cameras because they invited them in for another photo op. They figured, great looking photo op. The president taking time out of his busy schedule after golfing all day to address the troops overseas, Thanksgiving, yada, yada. And they set him up at this tiny little desk. I don't know, was it in the Oval Office or one of the ancillary rooms? I don't recognize all the rooms there, but the room is a wreck, for one thing. I guess they've moved all the furniture around or out, and the carpet is a wreck as a result for part of it. But anyway, he's sitting at this tiny little, like, coffee table size thing with a tiny little chair behind it, and they hung a presidential seal on the front of the table. It doesn't look like the sort of table you would ordinarily attach the seal to. And I think he's used this tiny little desk for signings in the past. I don't really know why they keep using this thing. Anyway, he looked like an idiot, not just because of what he was saying, but because he's sitting at this little kid's table. Everybody had a great time poking fun at it. And apparently, in answering reporters' questions afterwards, I'll just note for the record, maybe we'll discuss it a little bit more in depth later on. But he was asked essentially, if you lose, or you did lose, and once this is all said and done, and all the stupid appeals are thrown out, et cetera, if you've lost the race, are you gonna try and stay? You're gonna leave the White House? I don't know how the question was put. Trump kind of snaps at them and says, "You know what the answer is, but it's ridiculous. You're asking this stupid question." And I guess the way he put his answer was that if the Electoral College finalizes their vote and says Biden wins, then, I don't want to concede. That's going to be very difficult for me to concede that I've lost the race, so I'm probably not going to do it. But I'll leave, and you know that, and you shouldn't ask that question. And he was also asked, well, will you attend the Biden inauguration? And his answer to that, a little bit more cryptic, but saying, I know the answer, but I'm not going to tell you yet. And that, I guess, the answer is no, which I think may be unprecedented. I don't know. Who cares about the history of presidential inaugurations in that sense, which ex-presidents attended and which didn't. But anyway, he's determined to act like a child until the last. And I guess I'll just say this. I don't know why, given his record, anybody should bother with that answer or believe that answer. It sounds like the answer that kind of has to be true. Like, yeah, of course you'll leave the White House because they'll throw you out if you don't. I'm just a little confused as to why he picked. And I don't know that he named it. I didn't look at the video for it because he's kind of insignificant. But I guess my one question is, maybe we'll analyze it later on and look at the video. Armando will join us about 10 o'clock to talk about a couple of things that included, but we'll also take a peek around at a couple other fun subjects. But I'm just curious as to whether he meant after the Electoral College votes in December, he'll, announce that he's getting ready to depart the White House, or will he ask people to fight this stuff out at the counting of the electoral votes in January in the joint session of Congress? Does he even realize that there is such a thing? I don't know why he would concede leaving in December, or, that he would leave in January starting in December, or whether he'd drag it out. And he may yet change his mind when he finds out that there's a count of the votes in the 6th, and that there's a chance for idiots like Louis Gohmert to object and make a fight. So we'll see whether that answer changes. I no reason to take any one of his answers as gospel or as an informed opinion at this point. We haven't been able to do it for 4 years. I wouldn't rely on it now. So anyway, that among many interesting developments yesterday. How was your Thanksgiving? We can ask you about that. And as a matter of fact, maybe a good time now to kick this off as we wait for our first foreshortened segment to come around to the end. I read yesterday during our last segment, and I might as well start with a part of the first segment today, the names of all of the donors who have been participating in the recurring Patreon recurring monthly payments program, but there are many of you who have donated in other platforms, some of you repeatedly or monthly, just the same way, and whose names weren't yet read on the air. And of course, you absolutely deserve your recognition and my thanks and everyone else's thanks as well. And I got to thinking about the exercise yesterday, a little bit after I was done with it, and thinking, it's of course it's important to thank everybody for their support, but also I thought it might be important to let all of you know how many others are out there doing the same. It might have, on the one hand, the effect, of course, of prompting people who were thinking, oh, well, maybe I would join in. Well, there are plenty of people already donating, and I don't need to add to the confusion. I don't want to distract him with having to read my name or something like that. I don't know. Or just, there's plenty to go around as it is. Well, of course, everybody could use more. But as I was saying yesterday, it's not, we're not quite at the level where it's a self-sustaining business concern. And for instance, when you run into things like the power going out and you start thinking about needing a couple $100 worth of battery backup equipment, you start to think about these things. So anyway, the point really was, I thought that more comforting thought to get out of the reading of the list was, I'm not alone. He's not like depending on me to carry him through this all by myself or something like that, right? Or I'm not just doing something futile that won't help. I might as well hang on to my money at that point, or do something with it for the special elections coming up, whatever it is. Well, there are plenty of you. You're not alone. It's not a fool's errand or anything like that. And yes, absolutely, we appreciate it here, and I think hopefully you appreciate it and think it's a good investment as well. And there are lots of other people out there who enjoy hearing the program, and either, they make their small contribution along the way, or they can't afford to make that small contribution, but just don't want the show to disappear and are hoping that things get better later on. Anyway, the point is, there are other methods by which you too can make your contribution. Patreon, I find, nice and easy, and it enrolls you in a monthly payment program that helps sustain us so we can do this show more than just once. That'd be nice. But I have had people say, I don't know anything about Patreon. I don't want to hand my information over to yet another third party that who knows what could happen, etc. So originally we had set up to take PayPal, which, of course has the same problems, but you may already be signed up for PayPal. And PayPal, too, has an option for recurring monthly payments. It took a little bit of rigging, like the election, but it does work, and perhaps you would like to do things that way. And I have, of course, you can find us on PayPal. You can find the links in all of the summaries that Scott Anderson does. More about that, too, I have to make mention of. But the links are there in each of our morning posts, and of course I can answer that question easily enough if you can't find the thing. So I thought this was an interesting way to start, if only because it turns out that the first name on the list in our recurring monthly PayPal list here, and then of course as it gets down there you also have the option, as you would always have in PayPal, of making a one-time contribution if that's more appropriate in your mind. But the first name on the list here, this one struck me as odd. William Barr. I imagine it's not the Attorney General, William Barr, but you never know. He might say, well, that's a cogent legal analysis that you or Armando have provided, or a good guess by Greg, even though he keeps saying I'm not a lawyer, but more than likely it is someone else named William Barr, and I'm sure he's looking forward to the end of the Trump administration as much as any of us, probably a little bit more, and hoping that the other William Barr's memory fades. In addition, Susan Miller, not by any, no reason to believe that she's related to Stephen Miller, but there is a Stephen or possibly Stephen Miller who donates on our Cash App application as well. That, too, is out there, and we'll get to everybody who has donated that way. But William Barr, Susan Miller, John Weber, and Laura Condrick are using the PayPal. And I think, Laura, did you move over to the Patreon format? Is that what happened? A couple of people I saw recurring on the various different lists, and I was just checking, like, you're not accidentally signed up for more than one of these things and you don't know it, right? I don't want people accidentally giving money and then finding out, oh, crap, then this can happen with online recurring payments. So do be careful. Though if it happens to you, make sure you're doing it like for a couple $1,000s a month so that we can have a big party here before you discover it. John Weber, I mentioned, yes. Laura Condrick, Larry Handlin, Timothy Lapham, David Roten, is that how you would pronounce it? Roten, perhaps. Laura Van Bard, and one of our mail-in patrons, David Paquette, who sends a nice annual note along with a nice contribution. I appreciate that very much. Over on the Cash App thing, which is, I think, you've seen it. Probably a lot of people, I've seen a lot of people soliciting donations for things via Twitter on this Cash App, I think done by the people who do the Stripe back-end credit card payments. So, probably somebody who already has your payment information, and a trusted source of monthly or one-time or many sporadic donations by another long list of patrons of the show, including Jason, first on the list. No last name for Jason, but I would say probably king of the Cash App folks, because his name came up first on the list. So that's the way these things work. All right, very quickly, before the segment ends, there's Stephen Miller, which I am going to say is Stephen because otherwise I'm getting donations from both Bill Barr and Stephen Miller, so that could create problems. Wade Gruhl, Edgar Coble, Brian Tiemann, David Ryan, S. Scott Smith. I always like the first initial, folks. S. Scott Smith, Marshall Hoy, Kerry Raphael, Kenneth Keffer, Jocelyn Bramble, Lucian Giordano, Keith Stein, Erica Davis, Lisa Rawlinson. I feel like I should be giving more pizzazz to each of the names as they're being read out. Let's see. Guianina Della Torre. How about that? Is that pizzazz or is that just accidentally mispronouncing your name? That counts. Chris. That's easy. Another one-name thing, and I can handle those usually. Daniel Sanchez, who many of you may know from Twitter, as it turns out. Johnny Foster, Sunwarm Gardens, which I imagine is probably not your personal name, but is the account that you're using, and you know who you are. Thank you to whoever it is donating at Sunwarm Gardens. Sarah Patton, Jay Fennell, Michael Sweeney, Lee Kirby, Mary Anderson, Michael Hurahan, one name, Trudy, and we'll be back with more. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, and I've learned that I either need to update these announcements more often or stop saying that the announcements are brand new. What's not new is that this message, too, is a call for your support in keeping the Kagro in the Morning show on the air. My thanks go out to all of you who do support the show through your donations. The stats say that Kagro in the Morning fans download our program about 2,000 times each weekday. But our donors make up only about 8% of our daily listeners. Patreon.com, Patreon.com, makes it simple to make easy, secure, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. If we're helping keep you sane during the Trump era, consider what that's worth. $1 a day? 50 cents? One thin dime? We do about 20 shows a month, so pick a number, do the math, and head to patreon.com/KagroX to let us know. Thanks again, everyone, for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show. Still here. The power is still on, so that's good news. All right, let's see. I left off just by exiting. Hopefully I got it last of our one-name folks out there. Again, just thanking everybody who has been a sponsor of the show either once or repeatedly for many months. Trudy was our last one-name entry, and there are a couple more names. Not that many more. So, we'll get to the other stuff. I think this is the good stuff, but we'll get to the other boring stuff about what's happening in the world in just a moment. I wanted to first also thank Richard Hector. Maybe you haven't heard your name yet, and it's your turn. Michael Befus. Is it Befus? B-E-F-U-S. Ellen Bieberman, Lauren Fennis, Adam McGinnis, and oh, look at this. Here's someone that I don't know. This is a ridiculous name. William S. Harnsberger. That's crazy. I never heard of such a thing. It took me a couple minutes. During the break, I worked on pronouncing that the whole time. I think you all know Bill, who starts us off every morning with our morning tweet. Sometimes I forget to read it. Sometimes I don't. I jump into other things. But yes, we acknowledge your very generous contributions of the past. Ruth Bridgham, you too. You never start us off with a morning tweet. Would you like to start doing that, Ruth? There's no pressure or anything, but each and every one of you is a part of the contribution scheme. The big prize is you can start us off with a morning tweet, and I think it'll probably be one time before it drives me totally insane trying to fulfill the obligation of reading them all when they come through. There are a few more of you out there. In fact, we're down to 2 at this point, and so if I had a drum roll... drum roll sound effect, I would use it. I don't. I have, all right, what can we say? How about, what do we have that's good? What's a good, how about this one?
Thank you, God!
Right, yeah, I'm not exactly quite at that level, but I appreciate the thank you. That really helps, and it would be a whole lot better than,
what the hell is supposed to do, you moron?
This one would be totally inappropriate. For Miriam Jones, and then finally our drum roll, Janice Sieberlich. Do I have that correct? I hope I've got the last name on the list pronounced correctly. Thank you to each and every one of you, like literally, because I've read each and every one of your names. And if there's some method by which you have donated in the past that has gone undetected to this point, let me know. 1, we should probably detect that at some point. And 2, we would wish to thank you. And a couple of people who enjoyed hearing their names mangled or mispronounced, let me know yesterday. My pleasure, of course, to acknowledge all of you. I should be doing it more often. And as a matter of fact, in putting this out yesterday, there were a few other people who jumped in with additional contributions. And so, well, for some of you, it was in fact people who said, you know what, I'll up the contribution I give monthly as it is, and that's always nice. Although, yeah, we maybe want to spread the burden a little bit and have everybody just giving a little bit each month, and that should help us along. But I appreciate anybody who, of course, has come out and donated $1 monthly, $2, increasing it to $3, whatever it is you're doing. I really appreciate it. It does make it possible for us to do the show. Let's see, there were a few new people jumping in yesterday, and I might as well keep up with things here. Yes, John Wendt joining us on the Patreon program yesterday, and Jasper Ward as well. So some of them you may be people you're familiar with from Twitter or elsewhere. You can send them a note thanking them for their contributions, congratulating them for having their name read on the air, I suppose. And maybe we can keep this up so that it doesn't have to become a 20-minute segment each time. But I don't know, maybe we'll get some kind of fun sound effect that we can ring a bell or sound a foghorn or something like that each time a new contributor joins the list. Thanks again to everybody. This is the appropriate time to do it. And I hope that there are many more names to read in the future. Okay. Moving on to a couple other topics. Let's see. I put a few things aside, some nice articles to share, some things a little bit more esoteric, perhaps. This one grabbed my attention, so let's just go to there because I have attention deficit disorder, and we'll just go right to it and get it out of the way. From Arc Digital, and written by Kimberly Ross, an article that looked both interesting and relatively short. Young Republican grifters own libs, maybe, that's what they think they're doing anyway, and destroy the conservative movement. What is this all about? Well, it's about such young fools as Charlie Kirk and Candace Owens, herein pictured, in which the subheader tells us are part of the conservative youth group worshiping at the altar of Trump. It's actually an old article. It's for some reason making the rounds again, but it made sense, I thought, just in the context of starting to think now about what happens post-Trump. Where do people go? Do they simply rally around the, I think, somewhat outlandish possibility, but you never know, everything about him is outlandish, the possibility of his running in 2024? I don't know if going back to a civilian schedule and getting to do whatever the hell he wants is going to be a terrible setup for bringing him back to what should have been the rigors of the presidency, or maybe he just never really experienced the rigors of the presidency in the first place, and so it just seems like a continuation of his regular private life, but with bigger audiences, in which case, I guess, he runs until he dies. But anyway, just sort of wondering, if people who have made out well on the grift in the Trump years, I wonder whether their grift survives in an atmosphere in which, let's say, there is no Donald Trump, and grift has to make a certain amount of sense again, if it ever really did. I mean, really, this year, these last couple of years have been sort of anything goes for people, and of course that works perfectly for them because they don't really have anything to base their movement on. So just being out there and screaming about your grievances has been enough. And I don't know whether that survives the Trump era as well as everything else. Many people have pointed out, of course, Trump is just a symptom of the conservative movement, and this is kind of who they've always been. And to an extent, that's true. But I don't know. It seems like it's never before now been so easy to simply invent, or just spew out whatever crazy thoughts are in your head and say, this is a coherent, philosophy of governance, give me money. We'll see whether that survives. This article, again, is older. It's from August of 2019 and begins, I'll give you the date because it begins with, American conservatism is in disarray. It is still in disarray. So maybe the article was, very much, portended a lot of what was happening then and would continue to happen to this day. Yes, the Republican Party has the presidency, the U.S. Senate, and this is still possibly true, a favorable Supreme Court lineup, now even more clearly true, more governorships and state legislatures than the opposing party. Basically, they've got everything but the U.S. House. What they don't have is a youth movement that understands what conservatism is really about. They have a youth movement. They say they're conservative, but they don't really understand what's going on in the world or in that movement. A political ideology centered around small government, free markets, personal responsibility, and adherence to the Constitution has been hijacked by a populist phenomenon that looks nothing like the doctrine it claims to hold dear. Not a surprise to any of you, of course. At the heart of the new regime are personalities whose characteristics make them perfect sycophants for Trump. They are incurious, zealously so, just like their leader. But it's not enough in the arena of politics to be a lukewarm supporter, to be a public figure who says, well, Trump's less bad than the alternative, so we'll back him for now. No. The ones who want prominence, status, and maybe, just maybe, if they're lucky, a presidential retweet, must show unrelenting enthusiasm. They must go all in. They know that if they play their cards right, if they show unbridled energy in the service of defending the president publicly, it can propel them toward Trump's orbit. I don't know why everybody sort of thinks that ends in a payoff from him. It doesn't, but I guess it's enough that there's payoff from other idiots instead. This, by the way, is exactly what Trump needed to ensure that his 2016 victory was a takeover rather than an aberration. He needed grifters. He needed the unflinching loyalty of those committed to, quote, owning the libs above all else. And you may have seen yesterday that one of the weirdos from Prison Planet spent the day insisting that he was owning the libs by putting grated cheese on his food. And I cannot tell you for the life of me how that came to be an issue, but the closest we have is that Bruce McFarland let me know that I guess at some point this guy said, I don't even know what he circulated a picture of his plate of food, and I guess it wasn't Thanksgiving food? Because it looked like a piece of salmon and some vegetables. Like, okay, it's healthy and all, whatever. I don't like salmon, but he does. And then the same plate with grated cheese on both of those items on his plate. And I guess, I don't know what to tell you. I guess he must have said at some point that he liked putting grated cheese on his fish. And somebody said to him, everybody knows you don't put grated cheese on fish. I mean, I don't know. Do you? I don't eat a whole lot. I'm not a big fish fan. It's good for you. I should be, but I just don't love it. I'll tell you that. And I think I've seen grilled, or, fish with grated cheese on it. And maybe that's considered to be, I don't know, low. I don't know what. Is it just a cuisine mistake of some kind, of cooking mistake? People don't like it. People think that's gross. I don't know. It's gross to begin with, if you ask me. I don't like the fish, and I don't like cheese. So, I mean, what the hell? You might as well put anything on there at that point. It's not going to be good for me. But there was a restaurant we used to go to that used to prepare their fish in a particular way. They would do it any way you want, of course. But what was it? It was down in North Carolina on the Outer Banks, and I think it was the Tides at the time, right? And it's a restaurant that's changed hands a couple of times. If you are familiar with the Outer Banks and have been down on that part of Hatteras Island for a long time, you would have seen it as the Tides. I think it's now, well, who knows what it is now. At one point, it became the Captain's Table, nautical themes for seafood restaurants. And it might have had another name at some point. I don't know, Quarter Deck, or was that a different restaurant? I can't remember anymore. Anyway, when it was the Tides, they used to offer to prepare any of the fish on their menu the Tides way. And I think that had grated cheese on it. So this guy, despite the fact that he's crazy and has dedicated his life to the Prison Planet podcast and is therefore an idiot, whatever. He's got support out in the Outer Banks of North Carolina, I guess, if I remember correctly. Anyway, the point apparently was that people said to him, everybody knows you don't put grated cheese on fish. And that's enough for a Prison Planet guy. I'll show you, which, of course you can physically put grated cheese on fish. I'm positive it can be done. Anyway, I guess the long-ish story on the whole thing was, he said, people have said everybody knows blah, blah, blah to me 100 times, and they've always been wrong. Everybody knows Trump can't win the election, and then he won the election. Everybody knows you can't do this, that, or the other thing because it's against the rules in Washington. And then he did it. Well, I'll show you another thing that they say everybody knows about that you're wrong about. They say everybody knows you don't put grated cheese on fish. Honest to God, he spent the day. I'm spending the day now talking about this. And he put grated cheese on his fish and took a picture and he circulated and he says, cheese grated, libs owned. I was at a loss for quite a while as to what this could possibly mean. Like about 3 or 4 seconds where I said, what could this possibly mean? And I timed how long it said to take that. And then I moved on with my life. But I did ask that question. And I wondered on Twitter, anybody know what this guy is talking about? The only thing I can think of is someone must have told him at one point that Saul Alinsky didn't like grated cheese on his fish. So I'm going to own the libs by putting, and they have this crazy idea about what's upsetting libs these days. So there you go. He put grated cheese on the fish, and now he's owning us, I guess. And who knows? I can tell you this, as stupid as that is, as stupid as Charlie Kirk is, as stupid as Candace Owens is, they do make a lot more out of contributions than people who, actually have a head on their shoulders and might actually discuss what's really happening in the news. It's very difficult to watch that happening and realize that they're making out like bandits. I know Armando, when he joins us in the next hour, maybe that's another thing we can talk about, is the idea that, that just got him, piqued his interest there. I have a story about this. He was saying the other day, right, I should have been a right-wing grifter. I could totally make up this crap. I'd feel terrible, but I'd be rolling in it, right? So maybe that's something we can discuss at 10 too. All right, the rest of this article here. He needed the grifters, Trump did, right? He needed above all else for people to be committed to owning the libs. He needed a movement of young Republicans whose devotion to conservative principles was always paper thin. Because it has to be, because they're not devoted to conservative principles. Without these grifters, Trump would have been a blip With them, it's unclear whether conservatism can detoxify itself. I doubt it. This is why, despite all the levers of power Republicans currently wield, conservatism is actually in ruins. And it is Trump's young grifters who are helping him ruin it. Well, he's a grifter himself. It only made sense that they would make their way to being attracted to his model. Was there always this hidden undercurrent ready to spring up and spill over into the mainstream in response to Democrats moving further left? And did they move further left? That's a question, too. For those of us who cling to a pre-2016 conservatism and reject the current brand espoused by the president and his uncritical mass of supporters, I guess those people out there, we never really clung to that. The question is deeply uncomfortable. Still, it must be asked. And then speaking on Trump's rise here, Trump's ascent to the White House is one of those things that appears impossible before it happens. Yet after it does, you wonder why you ever expected anything different. Look at the inputs. George W. Bush, the compassionate conservative, was judged too friendly to liberal interests. John McCain, the 2008 Republican candidate, was to many conservatives even worse on this front. McCain's loss to Barack Obama ushered in a period of intense Republican anger. The response to Obama's 8 years in office, well, they were never going to go with a mild and moderate replacement. They wanted his antithesis. In 2010, the Tea Party wave wasn't, after all, a gentle rebuke. There were other under-the-radar episodes that predicted Trump, such as when Marco Rubio attempted a compromise on immigration reform, and his career was nearly ruined as a result. It really has been ruined. Regardless. Anyway, input after input showed that Republicans wanted something wild and new, a political force that they believed could counter what they perceived to be the Democrats' lurch to the left. In 2016, a weary GOP backed a scorched earth approach, and almost overnight, a bumbling, boorish reality star billionaire, and he's not a billionaire, took the reins and stormed his way to victory. Jeb Bush, Scott Walker, Marco Rubio, these candidates were quickly left in the dust, mouths agape, wondering how anti-politician became the darling of the right. Well, he did so by being, in the words of his supporters, a fighter, a warrior now, as Jenna Ellis puts it. Jeb Bush, who once politely requested his audience to clap for him, did not seem capable of pushing back against the leftist tide threatening to remake American society. As the Republican primaries gave way to the general election, as the tone of Trump's campaign grew coarser by the hour, the more Trump's base resonated with it. Savagery sells, especially when it's used as a retroactive salve to lessen the wounds of the past. Grievance, of course, is at the heart of this. The GOP couldn't make Obama's legacy disappear, but with each Trump-endorsed insult, Obama's two-term presidency seemed less important, less significant. And to Republican voters, that felt good. This is about as cogent an analysis as I've seen. Prior to his victory, there was a lot of talk about voters holding their nose as they cast their vote for Trump. A lot of talk about Trump being the lesser evil. You don't see this reasoning so much anymore. Trump has consolidated support and turned lukewarm supporters into enthusiasts. That's true. Even worked with Lindsey Graham. A major way he did so wasn't via Paul Ryan's acquiescence to Trump, as if the voters who sent Trump to the Oval cared a whit about Ryan. He consolidated support mainly by drawing to himself a network of grifters whose collected energies could set up a pro-Trump machine that would overwhelm the airwaves, the TV networks, the social media spaces, the college campus halls with a single unifying message. Even if it didn't come together all that coherently. Above all else, we must own the libs. There it is. Like any cult, the Trump cult requires passionate missionaries to disseminate its message. Older, established advocates, Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity, Fox News guests, radio hosts, and their ilk are necessary to bring their considerable listeners into the fold, but you don't go from cult to movement without the youth on your side, without a youth group. Is that a requirement? Sounds like it. One of the most well-known MAGA soldiers among the young MAGA grifters is Charlie Kirk, 25 years old at the time of this writing, so about 26 now, I guess. Founder and executive director of Turning Point USA, or TP USA. TP, of course, bringing to mind toilet paper for me, but okay. A student organization, allegedly, supposedly dedicated to free speech, free markets, and small government. And those sound great on paper and in sound bites, but the reality of what they do doesn't line up with their stated aspirations. No surprise there. Kirk's target demographic is impressionable high school and undergraduate students who are alienated within left-dominated academe and yearn for a place to belong. There's nothing wrong with such yearning. The problem is that this horde of conserva kids is fronted by Kirk and Candace Owens, the former communications director for TP USA, both of whom do a major disservice to the true conservative cause. In his review of Kirk's latest book, he wrote a book, Campus Battlefield, How Conservatives Can Win, and that in all caps, win the battle on campus and why it matters. For the Washington Examiner's Grant Addison minces no words, and there's a couple of bolded emphases, which are the authors here. Leveraging his youth, talent for public speaking, and access to the White House, he's fooled conservative donors into thinking he's helping the cause of freedom on campus. Likewise, he's fooled restless high school students and undergraduates into thinking performative victimhood and petty partisanship are epistemologically, there we are, satisfying. Neither is true. Whether due to ignorance or indifference, Kirk, and by extension his organization, are hypocrites, and childish ones at that. And this petulant hypocrisy undermines not just legitimate indictments of higher education, but the intellectual development of young conservatives. The great irony of Campus Battlefield is how thoroughly Kirk paints this picture in his own words. It's evident that Kirk envisions himself as some grand general leading his troops into the culture war. In reality, Kirk is a band director, his thoughts unoriginal and motions rehearsed. He trains his ensemble to play along to the tune of the day, currently that of Owning the Libs. After all, the band's job is to help cheer the team on to victory, a role Kirk performs with relish, and he goes from campus to campus, conservatism's fresh-faced Harold Hill, peddling his siren song to the kids in town until something better comes along. Lacking any substance to stand on, Kirk and his team are focused on winning at all costs. All the while they are either ignorant of or dismiss the idea that winning and winning well are two entirely different things. Donald J. Trump was certainly victorious on November 8th, 2016. Maybe, kinda. But to what end? Owens, meanwhile, has followed the MAGA grifting train to prominence. In her Quillette article, The Problem with Candace Owens, ARC director, or it's ARC Digital that we're reading here, remember? ARC editor, rather, Kathy Young, explains why we should question the influence of someone who once stood firmly on the other side of the political aisle and only experienced a conservative awakening once the conditions were firmly in place to lucratively profit from shifting ideological gears. Are you paying attention to this, Armando? This is how you would have to choreograph your switch. And she writes it this way. Owens' self-reinvention has certainly left quite a few people unconvinced. Mundane Matt, the libertarian video blogger who was among the first to denounce the social autopsy project, has slammed the new Owens as a cynical performer who doesn't believe a word of what she says and who plays victim just as much as the leftists she decries. Certainly could be true. Software engineer Marlene Jekyll, probably mispronouncing the name, but whatever, a self-described moderate conservative who recently went public about being ostracized by the women in tech community for challenging feminist narratives of victimhood, also had an extremely negative impression of Owens when she met her at the Conservative Political Action Conference in February. She's as fake as a $3 bill, she told me in a Twitter direct message, recalling that Owens seemed far more interested in taking selfies with more famous speakers than in discussions of issues. Whether Candace Owens has any ideas at all beside the advancement of Candace Owens is very much in question. I don't have very many questions about that. In April, here at ARC, Young wrote of Owens' ceaseless attitude of victimhood, her rank tribalism, and how toxic she is for black Americans and conservatism alike. To Kirk and Owens, personal advancement and name recognition matter more than educating youth on the history and merits of conservatism, if there are any. The TPUSA message is so flimsy and Trump-focused that it can be distilled into an imprint on a T-shirt without losing much force. Some might call that powerful. I can see why. Other young people recognize just how pernicious it truly is. Of course, Kirk and Owens are far from the only youthful MAGA grifters. Here's another one, but who I haven't heard of. C.J. Pearson, Pearson, is only 17 years old, or was at the time, but has already been on the political scene for a while. On the right and the left, it's a both sides issue to them, I guess. Youth is rewarded for little more than existing. Not very heavily rewarded here on this side. I don't think we yell at our kids all the time. Anyway, as long as a teenager spouts what established adults believe, they are quickly propelled to a larger platform. Often, that premature promotion becomes a problem. Pearson rose to fame in 2015, missed it, when at the age of 12, he began lambasting President Obama and the Democrats from his YouTube channel. Very easy to do, I guess. A very young black conservative denouncing a black leftist president naturally drew major attention. Once the 2016 presidential campaign season began in earnest in June of 2015, Pearson was all in for Senator Rand Paul. Until he wasn't, and neither was Paul, I guess. In September, he threw his full support behind Senator Ted Cruz and explained his desire to reach millennials. We're seeking to learn from the mistakes of Romney, learn from the mistakes of McCain, and seek to tap into a new generation of courageous conservatives, the millennial generation. But by December, Pearson had switched direction entirely and vocalized his support for none other than, how about this one, Bernie Sanders. Okay, people are struggling in America, that is true, he claimed. We need the right man in the White House, and in my opinion, that man is Senator Bernie Sanders. Whatever. A Paul to Cruz to Sanders evolution is quite a story, but it didn't end there. Not long after endorsing Sanders, Pearson wrote a brief article entitled, "I am 13 and Donald Trump becoming president scares the crap out of me." Okay, interesting title. I'm not scared only for myself, but also for my generation and the future of our great nation. Not a bad thought there. But honestly, his ascension begs the question, do people not know how bad Donald Trump is, or do they just not care? I hope it's the former, because you can help ignorance, but you can't fix stupid. This is what happened. In August of 2016, Pearson made another shocking announcement when he officially endorsed Donald Trump for president. How surprising. There's actually more to this. Want to hear his endorsement? In my young, optimistic eyes, after the last 8 years of the Obama presidency, there's little left to lose. There's only room to do better, and there's only one goal: to make America great for every American. Currently, or at least last year, Pearson maintains his support for Trump and has regained some of the GOP support he lost from flip-flopping all over the national stage. It's hardly surprising that both sides love him when he's one of their own. Adults are easily caught up in the appeal of a young person amplifying their beliefs. Say what I believe, kids. I'll love you for it. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Armando joins us as promised, as ordered, for the 10 o'clock hour.
As ordered by the Marshal of the Supreme Court, here I am.
Right. So we can move off of this topic. I guess, let's see. There are a few other comments on this, but I was wondering whether they uncovered any other names that we should keep an eye out for their pro-Trump grifting. But I think this really draws to a close after a discussion of C.J. Pearson. Weird that I ended up...
C.J. Pearson.
Yeah.
That's the young kid?
Yeah.
One?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I had no idea. I don't think I noticed him at all for whatever reason. Okay, let's see.
He was one of the less prominent ones. He
Yeah.
had a couple of moments in the sun, but
Okay.
mostly not.
Yeah. Well, I didn't.
He was no
notice him.
Dan Bongino. Let's put it that way.
I guess not. What I didn't know about him was that apparently he started out as a Rand Paul backer. Well, not terribly surprising. In June of 2015, but then by September he had made the switch to Ted Cruz. But he's not done because so this is by September he's in for Ted Cruz, and he's really the one that we should have been backing all along. But then by December, this is June of 2015, Rand Paul. September 2015. No, I meant Ted Cruz. December 2015. What I really meant was Bernie Sanders. That's the one we should be having. And then finally, after writing an op-ed entitled "I'm 13 and Donald Trump becoming president scares the crap out of me," by August of 2016, it no longer scared the crap out of him. He wasn't 13 anymore, I guess. So now I'm 14 and I love Donald Trump, and that's who we should be voting for. So Rand Paul to Ted Cruz to Bernie Sanders to Donald Trump. This is, he's a young kid. You can't really blame him too much for it. But, some young kids just say, I'm 13 and I don't give a crap about any of this. And later on, I'll pay attention. And I have more respect for them, I think. Anyway.
Or some 13-year-olds decide grifting looks pretty cool. Let me grift.
Yeah. Well,
obviously, I don't know if he was put up to it. A 13-year-old kid could be a bad kid.
Sure.
But it was obviously he was grifting.
Right. Maybe
he's
mom
not
and
the
dad
first,
were taking a skin.
and he won't be the last. So.
Right. So it's just another, a highly successful lemonade stand for him.
Exactly.
You don't think of it as grifting, but kids make a lemonade stand like, well, you just bought a can of Country Time lemonade and mixed it up. Am I paying you for that? I'm paying you for your entrepreneurial spirit. You see that? I like that in a kid. And here, I guess I could really make some money and get a career out of this. And 13 is I guess it's as good an age as any to find out. Don't bother staying in school, kids. You can make stuff up and get money for it, and maybe make a whole career out of it for your entire life. And that's not wrong. I know you've been toying with the idea. I saw you discussing it the other day. I should switch and become a Republican grifter. It will be a much more stable existence. I think I still could do it too. Despite everything I said, I could have this guy,
come to Jesus moment and recognize the greatness of Donald Trump, and more especially, I could recognize the depravity and just pure hatred that Democrats spew. It's just I'm just disgusted by it. I've never seen anything like it. I don't know how I got fooled into this, and I think now I've got to support what's best for the country, and that's Donald Trump.
Yeah, it's clearly easy enough to do.
It's easy.
Right, just make it up, and never mind the fact that there's a whole record of you endorsing somebody else or being a Democrat for 20. So what? Sanders, Cruz.
I was confused. I was fooled. That's how evil they are. It was fraud. I was defrauded.
My account was hacked for the first 20 years. Whatever it is, right? You can just go ahead and say that, or you believe the liberal media, huh? Whatever.
I did. I got brainwashed. Glenn Greenwald's right. It's just a brainwashing.
That's true. Yeah, I noticed. I think yesterday, he just finally. He's been around the bend for a long time, but I think over the cliff yesterday, asked about the Mike Flynn pardon, and he
approved.
Yeah, right. Do you actually approve of the pardon, or are you just saying, he was railroaded and blah blah blah, something by the the deep state, whatever it is you now believe in? No, I actually approve of the pardon outright. Really? Okay, well. As people were pointing out, I guess one of his early books, Glenn Greenwald, was how the Nixon pardon, Ford's pardoning of Nixon, was one of the great seminal moments in making permanent the corruption of the country. Yeah.
Yep.
So, but this one's cool. So that's cool.
Look, at this point, I don't even know, who would, on anybody's side, takes them seriously. Some people will use them for whatever reason, some to get a little notoriety for whatever they do, because he's going around doing interviews with everybody now. But he's almost pointless. I don't think there's anything to say about him anymore. It's just too obvious. Yeah. I don't know if anybody else has anything to say about him, but
none that I know of. But following his trajectory has been.
People know this. I was made.
Marcy Wheeler's doing it
I
right
promoted him a lot when you and I were both on the, on the front page of Daily Kos in the mid 2000s, and I would feature a lot of his work. And for that, to the degree I contributed to what has happened, I apologize to the country.
Yes. Refund of your grifting, please. That's what we're looking for.
Please.
Well,
speaking of grifting, though,
yeah.
I think this is an interesting topic that you have, because one of the things that I've been looking at, nobody else looks at it but me, so maybe I'm going to bore everybody.
We'll find out.
But I'm following how the elite strike force Kraken releasers are doing.
Yes.
And not because at this point I was worried about a different scenario where they could have, and we talked about it, and it really had to do with stopping certifications and then having the legislatures invoke 3 USC Section 2, which empowers, when there hasn't been what's called an ascertainment on the day appointed for the selection of the electors, which was election day, just to cut to the chase, then even after the state legislature can prescribe a manner to select after election day. But that requires no certification. And that's why I was so worried about certifications in Michigan and what might happen in some courts in Pennsylvania. And frankly, I thought Georgia was going to be completely stolen. I was wrong, and I know that's actually an important part of the story. So what I'm actually now trying to see is what's the wind down of the grifting of the elite strike force and Trump and the Kraken releasers. Where do they end on this? Because, look, I actually think that they've got a week, right?
Yeah.
Because December 8th is a Tuesday of the following week. So November 30th to December 4th is the 5 working days next week. And then you have a Monday and a Tuesday. You can't be issuing trial court orders overturning certified results on December 7th. I just don't see that happening. And the reason is, frankly, that there's this house of cards that was built for Bush v. Gore and then was actually being laid as groundwork now for Trump to sort of delay counts and get certifications or get things done and then make it impossible to stop what had been done by invoking the safe harbor. The Supreme Court invoked Bush v. Gore for the first time since its issuance in shadow docket opinions, staying things like the extension of the period for acceptance of mail-in ballots in Wisconsin. That was the one with the footnote where Kavanaugh goes into it, and then in the body of his opinion gets it all wrong, the facts, and then he stopped writing about that. So you had that structure built in. So I just don't think they can go beyond December 4th. So you got a week to grift, And what do we know?
Most of it.
Okay, what do we know? What do we know? There was this crazy opinion or order issued by frankly, sounds like a corrupt Republican judge on the Commonwealth Court of Pennsylvania, which, from what I understand, is like a second-level court. I don't understand the Pennsylvania court system, so don't quote me on that part. But she issued an opinion that it supposedly was enjoining Pennsylvania, the Secretary of State, the governor, from certifying the presidential election results and all the election results in Pennsylvania.
All of them.
And she issued it on the 25th, like middle of the day, like 11:30.
Wednesday.
25th was Wednesday, so it was 2 days ago. And Trumpsters were screaming, "Look, here it goes." Trump himself tweeted out, Jenna Ellis, who you could have done the same exercise you did on with the Pearson kid when she was very insulting towards Trump and how Trump supporters are crazy.
A lot of people have done that.
Yeah, then they've done that. So they've all gone out there and said, the certification has been frozen.
Okay.
And we know two things about that that's not true, and you can look it up yourself. I've tweeted it out to people. The National Archives, which is where the certifications are delivered for purposes of counting in the Electoral College.
Yes, one of a couple.
Right. They you can look it up. They have the Pennsylvania certification. You can look at it yourself. It's
one
there.
Of them got mailed to Mike Pence at the Senate. He can look at it.
Right. I mean, but my point is, it's in there.
Yeah. Right.
The Georgia certification is in there. The Michigan certification is in there. Those certifications haven't been frozen, but they keep saying they are.
Okay. I don't know why.
And I wonder how long they can just keep lying about this. Like today, in that same case, and I'm sort of making a point of it, there was in that same order, she scheduled a, quote, evidentiary hearing, which I'll talk about the fact that she scheduled an evidentiary hearing. It's for a facial challenge to a statute. What evidence are you going to bring? It's the statute, and you decide whether the challenge to the language of the statute. I don't need evidence for that. It's not an as-applied challenge, so I don't even know. This judge is clearly, well, she was a Republican, and her husband got arrested and convicted for stealing money from clients. So,
fun.
You know,
good grift.
It's a pretty interesting scenario. But at any rate, in her order, she has scheduled for 11:30 today an evidentiary hearing. Okay, and actually it's still listed, and I just tweeted out the link to it, that you can watch it on YouTube at 11:30.
Yeah, I guess we'll do that.
Well, I think we're probably going to get a blank screen, but it's kind of interesting because, I check what the Trumpsters are saying about what's happening. Oh, this hearing and the certification has been stopped. Well, obviously, we know the certification hasn't been stopped, and they don't want to. I don't know if they want to believe or not believe it, or they're saying it's going to be undone, whatever. But this hearing today is interesting because it's not going to happen. Why? Because, as I understand it, when the governor actually took an appeal that he didn't need to, but to do the certification because he'd already done it, but he took an appeal of the order to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, which apparently you can do in Pennsylvania.
All right.
Adam Bonham told me so. So if Adam says it must be so. And that actually basically vacated the order that the judge issued.
Wow.
So there should be a hearing because there's an appeal of it, and apparently that deprives the Commonwealth Court judge of jurisdiction over the matter. So we'll see. I'm kind of curious how they explain that this hearing did not happen. Is sort of one of the things I'm looking for today. The other thing that supposedly happened that apparently hasn't happened is the Kraken release in Georgia, which everybody's made fun of the document, right? The misspellings of circuit and the screwed up formatting. It's an embarrassing piece of work by anybody. I mean, beyond being crackpot, at least you can proofread your crack pottery,
Yeah.
So she didn't do that, right. But it turns out that complaint hasn't actually been filed.
Trump and paperwork, man.
Right.
He's always checked.
Look at the lawsuit. Well, it's just a PDF online until you actually file it with the court. There is a case in Michigan which is been filed. No, any type of injunctive relief is being sought immediately. There should have been like a motion for some kind of injunction. But today's Friday. She's not going to file it by today. She's going to file it when? Monday? You can't just take your time on these things like this if you think it's important. But the Georgia filing didn't happen. But, of course, they're going on. Are they ever going to notice the Trumpsters, I mean?
No.
She actually didn't file that complaint?
No. And I guess if you pointed it out to them, they would say somebody in the deep state erased it. I guess.
How long can this go on, though? What is the end game? What did they say? What does Jenna Ellis and Rudy say on December 8th, for example?
Well, I don't know. I mean, other than, I guess, trying to hook up with the Louis Gohmerts of the world to say our next step is to fight this out on the floor during the joint session.
I think that's where this ends up, right? Because that way they can keep grifting at least to January 6th.
Yeah, and I mean, even afterwards, I suppose, if you have the right audience, I'm filing a suit, and then just don't file it. I'm filing a suit, and just say, I'm filing directly to the Supreme Court, and the marshals of the Supreme Court is going to come and get my paperwork. A little-known provision that allows me to sue to overturn the election because Joe Biden is illegal. What? I don't even understand that.
Okay.
But okay.
So okay. I mean, I guess that there will be people that believe that, and they'll keep giving. I just wonder at some point how
not as lucrative.
What the exit strategies. For example, like you just said, I just thought about it. It's the Georgia runoff election is January 5th, and then the Senate meets on January 6th. I mean, the Congress, the joint session of Congress to accept the findings of the Electoral College is January 6th.
Yes.
So I suspect Loeffler and Perdue will be asked, and they will say that they will not vote to accept an Electoral College result in favor of Joe Biden. That they will not. That they'll vote no.
That's the answer to give if you want to rally the Trump Republican faithful in Georgia for your election. So certainly up to the morning of the 5th, they will have to say that that's true. And no reason to believe that they're kidding about that. They are that dumb and weird, and they might do that.
No, I think that it's probably good politics for them. I don't know if it's going to be enough, because what's going to happen, though, is for the whole month of December, Trump's going to keep yelling fraud and how the Georgia election machinery is completely fraudulent. At some point, people don't vote, I suppose. And he's not on the ballot anyway, so it's going to be kind of weird for that. I just am curious to see how the grifting ends. I know they get to say for the rest of their lives it was stolen. I get that. But at some point, can you keep asking for money for lawsuits because it was stolen in February, March?
I guess there's got to be diminishing returns. A few people have got to realize that it's ridiculous, right? But maybe not everybody, because some people are crazy.
I followed some of them. Some of them were disappointed. They thought Sidney Powell was going to really do something.
There is, in fact, a lawsuit.
At least articulate a theory and do a good presentation, professional presentation.
Yes.
And, she didn't. And I saw at least a few of them are like, geez, what's this exactly?
So they're getting
a little skeptical, somewhat.
Yes, a big Trump donor. The headline in the Hill: a donor.
Yeah, the $2.5 million guy. Yes,
sues pro-Trump group after failure to prove voter fraud. Empty promises is the quote here, and I guess he's suing for $2.5 million over the empty promises, which I don't know. I don't know about that empty promises statute, but okay. Suing for $2.5 million, saying they failed to prove voter fraud, and I don't know whether he gave them $2.5 million, is suing for the money back, or I don't know what the deal is, but somebody, obviously, who's a prominent donor and prominent enough to get in a newspaper over it, where other people will see it and say, that's right, that is weird. They did promise this, and it was far, far, far from the truth. Or, I guess some of the others will find out they didn't even file that thing. I mean, they just made a PDF and put it on the internet and said that's it, and I saw it, and I had no reason to believe that it was styled as a court filing, so I didn't check. I don't even know what system I would use to check that. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know about those things. But I don't know. Certainly people could be... apparently he's filing suit against True the Vote, some of the dumber grifters out there. But he's suing a specific pro-Trump group. And even when people realize what's going on, they don't, I don't know whether this suit can go anywhere. Maybe that's why he's suing True the Vote instead of someone else. But certainly the rank and file Republican response would be, well, I'll sue, I don't know, Trump, or I'll sue Sidney Powell, or I'll sue one of the people whose, faces are on the news for lying to me. But there's no one to sue, and there's no grounds really for most of this stuff, unless they are suing to get their big donation back, I suppose is a possibility. But
well, I mean, that's what that guy is saying. They made false representations to him and used the $2.5 million in ways that weren't represented to him. I mean, that's frankly a common law fraud
here
argument.
It is. Okay.
That they told me they were going to do A, B, and C, so I gave them money and they didn't do it. And that they knew they weren't going to do it, therefore it's fraud. Blah blah blah. And
meanwhile,
who cares? Some rich guy
those...
got duped out of $2.5 million.
Yeah. Just do note that in the records for those of you who might if you run into anybody that's still clinging to the idea that millionaires are smarter than the rest of us, they deserve it, they should get a tax cut because they're so innovative and they can create jobs. This guy. So dumb that he believed that True the Vote was going to release the Kraken somehow, and he gives away, apparently freely able to give up $2.5 million on a moment's notice for something that was always idiotic on its face. Give him a tax cut so he can create some jobs. I'm sure they'll hire you. Anyway, yeah, just general ideology.
I just wonder what the exit on this is. Or if there is ever an exit. Maybe they don't care that they were duped. Or it's better to believe that they weren't. I don't know.
Maybe. Yeah, or the guy has...
What their thinking is.
Maybe over at True the Vote, they've already converted that into, to use my
new fundraising.
Example. Right, or, Ducati motorcycles and, whatever else. A boat, for the next boat parade. Whatever. They've absconded with the money, and it'll be awfully difficult for the guy to recover it, perhaps. But right up to now, you can find millionaire whales who will wire you $2.5 million on the promise of nothing. So I guess the grift never ends.
It does. I'm just actually waiting to see when it dawns on them that these people have all been lying to them.
Yeah.
Look, again, there's one other case, but they don't even have enough cases in enough states to turn this around at any rate. Okay, so they don't even have a case in Arizona. They have a case in Nevada that I don't understand because Nevada's actually already been certified, but the mail, it hasn't arrived in the mail yet at the National Archive. Maybe it'll arrive today.
It's late. It's being delayed.
So
we don't know that it's there. And we should be able to track it. It's registered mail you're supposed to use. So
that's right. So
can anyone track it?
There's no active case in Arizona that I know of. The Nevada situation is it's not the elite strike force. It's just some lawyer in Nevada I don't know who he's suing on behalf of. To be honest with you, I don't know that much about it. I do know that they've scheduled a hearing for December 3rd, an evidentiary hearing.
Okay.
December 8th is the key date. Why, if you're actually going to have an evidentiary hearing, because whatever you find goes up on appeal. You can't wait till December 3rd. They should have had it today.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's just judges. I don't know. It could be just humoring people. Schedule an evidentiary hearing, but make it obviously too close to the safe harbor date and the vote of the Electoral College. Maybe you'll get the point and go away. If not, we'll all come in and have a few laughs at the evidentiary hearing. And I'll rule whatever seems like fun because the appeal will never be finished in time and might just be moot by the time it comes around. And I don't know. So you could do it as a corrupt pro-Trump judge. Hell yeah, I'll do anything to give him a leg up. Or you could do it as a joke.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I haven't followed. I should actually dig in to see something about this judge in Nevada. And I figured out this McCullough is, sort of a wacky Republican, corrupt Republican judge in Pennsylvania.
Okay, yeah.
Her problem, of course, is the Supreme Court in Pennsylvania is 5-2 Democrat. So I don't know where she gets to go with it. The other case that's going on in Pennsylvania, which is Rudy's case, is in the Third Circuit where he's not admitted to practice.
Right.
And he couldn't even get his application in because he said he couldn't get his certificate of good standing from New York, which Here's my question for you. You go to court in the federal court in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Which is in the Third Circuit.
Yes.
And you'll say all along that you want to get to the Supreme Court. All right. So when you first go in there, why haven't you got your stuff together knowing what you're going to have to do in the Third Circuit? I mean.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean.
How? I actually find it hard to believe. I wonder if there's some problem with his, like he didn't pay his dues or he didn't fill out his CLE thing or something with his New York thing, because I find it hard to believe that he couldn't get a certificate of good standing.
Either
there is COVID, I get that, but they've actually sort of done something to make it more accessible. So at the very least, say that you put in you've asked for your certificate or something like that, but he didn't even do that. And now he's asked for special permission. Look, I can't get it because of COVID. Can you just let me argue anyway?
Sure. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not certain how you not get that lined up unless either he's not in good standing, or it would be very hilarious to find out that the people at the Bar Association are like, let's leave this for after the holidays. Put it in the stack. We'll get to it. I'm not saying it won't be processed any faster or any slower than anyone else. It's just not going to help you. But, wow. All right, well, let's take a quick break.
That would surprise me.
And come right back. It will be fun. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Or read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. All right, we continue with Armando. We're just sort of chatting our way through Friday. I think that's a fine way of handling things, keeping people company on the post-Thanksgiving Friday. I see, by the way, by the press pool reports, Trump on his way out they say an as-yet undisclosed location. That's the golf course. I love when they do that. He comes out in a golf hat and golf shoes. He's on his way to an undisclosed location. Operating room, nuclear missile silo. What do you think? It's golf shoes, guys. He's going golfing, so I guess he'll be up my way in a few minutes. I should leave the show and let you do it. I'll go out there and people just need to start throwing things at his motorcade. Right? You'll be arrested. Don't do it. But really, honestly, I just can't believe that he can calmly and without disruption roll in here with his COVID train and make our numbers go up.
Yeah, I mean, okay. I guess they're waiting to so he's not president, I assume. Well, he won't be there anymore. He won't be in D.C. much at that point, I would assume. So he'll leave you alone. He'll just do his little train to his golf course near Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah, I imagine he'll just be playing there, and he'll fly up occasionally on his planes, I guess, and go play in New Jersey during the
New Jersey in the summer.
But I think we'll be done with him here. I don't think he'll make any special visits here. There's nothing great about this guy. It's a nice course, but I don't think that's anything that'll bring him back. So it'll be good to be rid of him. Where we left off before the break, we were talking about the fact that Rudy Giuliani not admitted to practice in the Third Circuit, but I guess due there in a couple of days, can't get a certificate or hasn't been able to obtain a certificate of good standing with the Bar Association in New York. Curious as to why that is, but also, the guy hasn't been in court, in federal court for a long time. That was pointed out the other day, since 1992 or something like that. But you were mentioning during the break, I guess another example of this, I had seen a newspaper clipping about his appearance in a municipal court in Florida. Was there another one about it with a dispute over somebody with did you say a fence, like a property line dispute?
I believe that's what it was. I could be wrong, but I thought it was sort of a dispute between. He was representing some neighbor on some easement thing. I don't know. I honestly don't know, and it's hard to understand what Rudy would know about any of that stuff anyway.
Nah, it's
but
just,
they wanted
you're
to
a lawyer.
bring
Do me a
Rudy.
favor.
I'll have to look it up now.
Okay.
Put a
I
bug
know
in my
about
brain.
one that was one of his assistants who was rumored to be having an affair with him. Their daughter had a problem. I don't know what it was. I forget now what it was. It was in the article, but it was like a fraud issue, simple fraud issue, and she showed up. Oh yes, that's right. She was she was driving uninsured and got in a car accident, and she knew she was uninsured, so her first call was to her insurance to say, "I'd like to renew my insurance, please." And they said, "Okay, no problem."
That's the case I was thinking.
Okay. And then the next day she called and said, "You'll never believe it. I got in an accident as soon as I renewed my insurance." And you'll never believe it. The police are already on their way. "Oh, thank you for the accident." "No, to arrest you because this is insurance fraud, you dummy. You got to wait longer than that." This is the fraud advice program. Please call in if you're thinking of defrauding your insurance. We'll give you good advice on how to do that. I don't really know anything about it. I'm just going to say you probably need to wait longer than that, or just write this one off. You're not going to get it. You can't do it. I don't know what the interval would have to be. I would say anything within a month will probably get you flagged. So
yeah, that's the case. And it was actually happened just before he went to become, quote, Trump's personal lawyer.
Okay, so
that's why he got a lot of attention at the time. It was kind of funny.
One last hurrah in the municipal courts. I also am not admitted, but okay.
Well, they could do a pretty informal pro hoc there, and they could say, make a representation to the court and let him talk for 20 minutes. But the Third Circuit's just different. It doesn't work. I don't know that. Again, it's just slipshod nonsense. But of course, the only reason he would need to be admitted at this point is you don't need his name on these briefs they filed or whatever they filed.
Yeah, he's gonna
he wanted to talk for 20 minutes.
Yeah,
and I'm not sure the Third Circuit is going to take oral argument on this case anyway.
Wow. Well, okay.
I think they have they decided, unless they're going to overturn a decision they just made 10 days ago, the Bonyek case on standing. It just knocks them all out. Beyond.
Ordinarily, I would guess, you're right. We don't need to hear oral argument on this. Although, I guess if I'm sitting on that panel, I would say it's not that I need oral argument. It's that I would like to see how he arranges to get here. So let's have the oral argument and see him scramble to get admitted in time to do it, and then just call on him and have, and if he stands up, say, "Wait a second, I've just been handed this note by my clerk that says you're not allowed to be here." I don't know.
So sit out.
That would be fun, and then I don't know. I guess somebody else would stand up and do it.
They could do that. I mean, who knows? But
a waste of their time.
Things happen so quickly, but I think everything has been. That case is like a long time ago. Strange enough, in this new world of everything happening so fast, because it has to, because December 8th, right?
Uh-huh.
So you have it was last Saturday, right? That the judge issued the opinion. It was literally just 6 days ago. And then Rudy didn't move for an appeal until Monday, and then he didn't file for. Then he filed for expedited review like on Monday afternoon. Then finally on Tuesday he sought an injunction staying certification, which actually was before, and the Democratic response was quick. The Third Circuit never ruled on it, and guess what? The certification is now sitting in the National Archives where we first entered this story. So there's no need for an injunction anymore. In fact, there's no need for this lawsuit anymore. He needs to file a new one. it seems to me, that calls for reversing the certification. Now, he's said a lot of things in his prayer for relief, his seeking for remedies, but none is reversing the certification. It was to stop the certification. Well, now I can't do that. Your case is moot, the court could say, too. You need to go file a new lawsuit.
Yeah, and you haven't got much time for that. They might give him leave to amend this one somehow, although really at this point,
that's what he's actually appealing, which is the weirdest thing. He's not appealing dismissal of the first one. He was dismissing appealing the failure to allow them to do a third one. By the way, it wasn't the first one. And if you actually hear the whole convoluted story of who were lawyers and then they withdrew, and then there were second lawyers, and then they withdrew, all in the matter of like 4 days.
Nothing happening here. Now look away. It's fine.
And they said, look, you have to understand. It's like, no, I have to understand you're a bunch of Keystone cops. What do you want me to do? Beyond that, the merits, he needed to appeal everything. I don't know how they tried to make it just about the motion to amend, because if you leave the rulings in place for why they were just the first one was dismissed, you already lose the second one. So it's just bizarre. But we'll see where that ends up. I mean, I guess they could let him just talk for just to say, oh, we gave you a chance. If I was a Third Circuit, I would not take argument. You don't need a spectacle. And it's not even a long spectacle. There's not going to be evidence presented. It's 20 minutes of oral argument. That's all.
We have seen this crazy show already. We know what he says. He's given the speech already.
Yeah, exactly. We don't need to hear that speech again. And in fact, it's not really germane to anything, because these are discrete legal issues. In case you're wondering and aren't bored yet, let me tell you that what they're appealing requires that the appellate court find that the district court abused its discretion in not allowing an amendment. And that's, in theory, it's a high bar, but it's just whether they agree with it or not is what it's going to end up being. And the problem for that is that there's futility here, because what they want to replace it with is basically already covered by the dismissal of the First Amended complaint. So I don't really understand this appeal in that sense. It should have been on the merits and say the judge was wrong in everything he said, not that he was just wrong because he didn't give me a chance to amend.
You would think they would take the maximalist position just out of habit. He said, everything that guy said was...
You don't want to be collaterally estopped by anything that judge decided. It's very weird.
I don't know what they're doing either, but okay. Okay, so they're doing this thing, and I don't know. I don't know what happens. I guess we wait and see. I assume you're right here that the Third Circuit says, I'm doing you a favor by saying no oral argument, so just accept that.
Right. So just trying to give you a scorecard, there is, in theory, a case in Pennsylvania. In theory, 2 cases going on that something could happen there. There's one. I don't know how many cases are in Michigan. There might be 2 that it's all the same nonsense about poll watching and all that's already been decided. So it's like just rehashing the exact same lawsuits over and over again. At some point, someone needs to just say that's already been decided in this other case, so I dismiss with prejudice here and go to the appellate court. The thing that I don't get is, why do they keep filing the same lawsuit instead of appealing the ones they lose?
I don't know. I
mean, is it the plan to get to the Supreme Court of the United States? I mean, the way you get to the Supreme Court of the United States is by appealing.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
Not by getting remanded back to the trial court. It's bizarre.
I don't know what they know about what they're doing. The age may have overtaken them. They're just crazy. Maybe they're eating hydroxychloroquine. No idea. I mean, it's that far gone. It's clearly just like, but you're not doing the thing. You say you're lawyers, but one, nobody knows whether you're certified or not, and 2, you're not doing any of the things that a lawyer would do, a knowledgeable or even a terrible lawyer would do. How do you think you're going to get to the Supreme Court this way? And I guess maybe they just think, I don't know, the court just reaches down and saves us. Can't somebody there just help us out and grab this case because we don't know what we're doing. Well, that's going to be embarrassing. So no.
Well, I mean, they had they had two legitimate law firms in the sort of involved in Pennsylvania that, they got embarrassed by what the people in the Trump campaign were saying. Look, there were big, powerful law firms that represented George W. Bush in 2000. And they weren't embarrassed to do it, even though they should have been. But the reason they weren't is because they got to act like actual lawyers, make actual arguments based on actual things, right? When you're going to represent Trump in this, you've got to invoke Hugo Chavez and Dominion, and I mean, it's just insane. And no respectable law firm is going to want to be a part of that.
No, and they're out.
And that's why they all left. Jones Day left. Davis Wright, which is I guess a prominent Pittsburgh firm, left. And you're left with Rudy and the Kraken releaser person. Yeah. And Jenna Ellis. I mean, that's your elite strike force.
I guess so.
None of them know how to be. None of them are good lawyers.
No.
None of them are. I mean, they're barely lawyers at this point, is what you'd have to say.
Yeah, you really have to question whether they are at all. I mean, they simply can't produce any certification that they are. And I don't know. I guess Sidney Powell at one point was a more respected. I mean, Giuliani at one point was respected.
Well, she was a criminal thing, and I remember reading some of her things, which were crackpot in the Flynn stuff.
Yes, by that point, I think
they were proofread.
True.
You know what I mean?
Yes. I don't know. I wonder sometimes whether they were like, you know what? Don't proofread it because that makes it look like an emergency filing. And everyone will say, oh, well, they're so rushed. This gives it a genuineness of misspelling all these things. But I don't know whether that was a thought or whether they just didn't spell check or take a look or they're just in another world. I mean, they may just be, hallucinating the whole thing. I have no idea. Meanwhile, I guess Powell gets to say like, well, if I'm such a bad lawyer, how did I get Flynn a pardon? She's probably trying to claim some credit for this.
Yeah, that's a good question, Sidney. How did you get that?
And I think the answer is just with all of his pardons. I mean, I think Trump is surprising everybody with the pardons because he's just not going through any process. Ordinarily, you go to there's pardon attorneys at the White House who study this stuff ordinarily inside and out and present it. They make the case to the president. I think this one really needs to rise to the top. And here's the reasons. And you check it out to see that it's ironclad. And there's some political vetting, too, to make sure you're not going to hurt yourself or your party or whatever. But Trump, I think, just makes decisions about it. And he tweets it first. And then he doesn't ask the pardon attorneys, are we good on this? Is it all ready? Can I do it? He just tweets it. And then the pardon attorneys have to scramble for producing the paperwork, for one thing. I mean, I think he may have pardoned Flynn without actually having anything drawn up, which would really be amazing because you could have written that up months ago. Everybody knew he was going to eventually come around to do this. But I think he surprised everybody. And he may, whatever's on TV tomorrow, he may pardon somebody for that. There's a lot of betting pools going around about who might still get a pardon.
It's interesting to consider who he's going to. I mean, there's some obvious corrupt ones that don't involve him directly. It's just like Jared's father, who was put in jail by Chris Christie. My understanding is that he'll almost certainly get a pardon.
Sure, why
so
not?
His criminal record. Exactly. I mean, it's corrupt and it's nasty, but of all the pardons that you're worried about, that's actually
actually,
one of the less ones.
Here's something I was thinking about. This is just interesting. Mull this one over. Of course, everybody worries that he'll try to pardon himself, and there's all sorts of writing out there about, yes, you can, no, you can't. Here's what we'll do if he does. Don't worry about it if he does. Or maybe Biden. Somebody even said Biden should pardon Trump for the good of the country. Now, obviously, I disagree with that.
Would be committing political suicide.
Yeah. Although,
and for Trump.
Well, that's true. Although then I was thinking okay, well, as long as we're talking about political suicide things. All right. Suppose he wants to pardon himself and he's not going to wait for Biden to do it. I want to take care of it now. I'll pardon myself any of the schemes, either, resigning minutes before noon and having Pence pardon him, or he pardons himself and gives it a shot. I wondered if anybody had talked to him about it and said, there's real questions about this. There's even grounds for challenging the pardon, which even ordinarily, presidential pardon power is just completely unfettered. You can do what you want so long as it's a federal crime. And it would be, on brand for us to say it can be done, so it will be done, so let's do it. But I wondered whether anybody thought, backlash, et cetera, the case will remain in the public eye. Maybe a better way to bury it would be, all right, so ready for the long shot. If you want to find a way to neutralize the shock and trauma of pardoning yourself, pardon Hillary Clinton alongside yourself. I know that seems counter to everything that you're about, but so what? Who cares about that? 180-degree reversals are part of your brand. But let's pardon Hillary Clinton. Not that there's anything to pardon, and it would be all made up stuff. But to go out there and say, look, I think we should close the books on the Trump presidency. I think it's unfair for you to be pursuing me after I'm out of office, but I understand you're angry and upset. But let's be bipartisan about it. This will be the end of the pursuit of Hillary Clinton as well. I'm fair-minded enough to see that we should just put all of this to rest and put this behind us. And anybody that then complains or says, no, you can't just make up crimes for Hillary Clinton and then pardon them and then say, see, I've done her a favor. You haven't done her a favor. She hasn't committed any crimes. You're wrong about that. We should still pursue you. See, I'm trying to reach across the aisle and be bipartisan and close the books on this chapter and let Biden take over with a clean slate. But you liberals, you won't take yes for an answer. I wondered about, does anybody think that would shield him in any way? Would there be national columnists writing, well, to be honest, to be fair, he is helping us move on by closing this chapter of America's history, and she should accept, even though she's done nothing wrong. Why not say, sure, I'm glad that this is over and people won't be pursuing me for the rest of my life? Not that I think that QAnon people will believe it, but I just wondered whether he could would Maureen Dowd say, that's the way we should end this chapter? Yes. Good call. I just wonder. I don't know. I mean, it's just dumb enough that it could possibly happen. And I wonder whether it would buy him legitimacy. Yeah, I mean, so she would go for it, I guess. But I don't know. But yeah, probably other than Jared's family, I don't know. A lot of other people betting on some other things, or maybe some other historical figures like Susan B. Anthony that he pardoned, or whatever else. I imagine he's just going to issue them left and right whenever it strikes him. Anytime he's on a long car ride. He might have done one on his way to the golf course, for all I know. So, I don't know. I just wanted to sort of throw that theory out there in case it happens at some point and everybody says, what? Who could have predicted this? Well, I'm crazy enough to predict that. Sure, let's spend 5 minutes on it on the show. That may have thrown you for a loop. I don't know.
Yeah, it sort of did just a bit there. But it's who knows what the day will bring. I mean, honestly, I guess you discussed early on your show the Trump's whole little desk thing,
the tiny desk thing. Yeah, we did. But certainly I don't know. There's much more to observe, but yeah, that was a weird thing. I was most struck by the fact that he was doing this in the middle of the night.
It was weird to me that. Here's what's weird about it to me, and it's obviously very funny and very appropriate. But did no one know what that would look like? Why didn't he just sit at the Resolute desk?
I am not sure. That's you would think that's kind of if there was anything the troops wanted to see at all from him, I would suppose it would be an Oval Office, Resolute desk thing. And he might even have been in the. I can't tell, but he's in. Although the carpet doesn't look right, I have no idea, and I can only guess that. On a zoomed-in camera, not Zoom meeting, but the zoom in on the camera. If you zoom in tight, and he got just desktop and the top of the presidential seal and tight on Trump's bloated face, that it looked like maybe that was normal. And only on the wide angle that we got the photos. I mean, it was like a choreographically criminal. Is that even I don't know. To allow press photographers in to take a picture of that scene, and they should have just been issued stills from the address if the framing was right on camera. But I don't know. It looked ridiculous. That tiny desk. There was also the giant microphone boom stand, and the carpet, which was all dirty and messy, and bare walls behind him. I don't know. No idea how that happened.
Everyone remembered that apparently there was a very nice rug there. He replaced it with one from the lobby of some rip-de-do hotel or something.
Maybe one of his hotels. Reuse this rug.
They always talk about the optics, like the Trump image is very important to Trump. That's like, well, that actually tells you something how bad his taste is, because the things he chooses to do, like the stupid blue suit, red tie combo with his stupid hair. I mean, he looks terrible in a suit. He actually just doesn't.
They don't fit.
Actually, have any good sense of style. No. The gold-plated bathrooms are ridiculous. I mean,
yeah,
it's just weird.
I don't know. The whole Trump era in the White House, the photography has been a disaster generally, and I think it's because he hired event photographers that he knew, but people who were like society pages photographers in the 80s in New York, where every photo was a lineup of the famous people at Studio 54 tonight. And they just stand there, and he and Jeffrey Epstein and whoever they're dating are take a picture. And there's no real staging. And to the extent that there's any staging, it's like a wedding photographer. Everybody on this stand angle this way, everybody on this side angle the other way, and center in on Trump and give the thumbs up, and you just take a picture, and regardless of what's in the background, no real, it's somebody who just takes snapshots like that. And the whole White House photography, I mean, you're supposed to have top-notch people that can tell a story with the photo the way they did in the Obama administration. And Pete Souza has got this fantastic Twitter feed, and I imagine also Instagram feed with he's, I guess, the old saying of a picture worth 1,000 words. This is true of Pete Souza's photography. Trump photographers, they're worth like 50 cents. They're literally, they don't tell any story. And to the extent they tell anything, it's, we haven't given this any thought. That's the backstory to all this stuff. He's nuts. By the way, I guess Ghislaine Maxwell needs a pardon.
It's, the lack of taste.
Ghislaine.
But of course, that's always been him, right? So
yeah, well, right. For him, again, no publicity is bad publicity. No photo with me in it is a bad photo. So I guess he's a tasteless idiot, and it's all here. And
so what's the next tasteless thing he's going to do would be the question.
Yeah, I don't know. A lot of golfing, and then sporadic pardons. I guess Ghislaine Maxwell is the next most tasteless one on the list. That one would cause the most uproar, and it doesn't make any sense, and it's completely contrary, for instance, to QAnon theory about battling networks of underground powerful pedophiles, but they'll somehow say, this was a great thing. I wish her well. A good pardon. She's a good person, whatever. And I'm owning the libs anyway somehow by pardoning this person. And I don't know who else. I mean, I guess Jeffrey Don.
Well, I mean, you didn't even get into the children.
His own kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I imagine that. Yeah, that goes on. Although I could actually see him say, "I pardon myself," and then, walk out the door, like without signing those things.
I pardon myself and Ivanka.
Yeah.
But not the rest of you.
Right. Maybe you might remember Ivanka and no one else, but I could see him leaving before he signs it. I could see him saying, "I pardon myself," and then leaving office without signing the thing. And if he does it late enough, I'm sorry, you didn't sign this paper, and it's noon now. You're not the president anymore.
Yeah, you're not the president.
Come on. So I don't know. And then he has to decide where to live in exile, I guess, if that's the case. All right. Well, we do have to wrap up. I guess I will give you something to ponder over the weekend, or maybe you know the answer offhand. But I've been thinking about the state charges still pending against him in New York State. But if he goes down to Mar-a-Lago and lives there, what's the situation on extraditing somebody back to New York for trial if they live behind a wall of Secret Service protection?
That's a great question.
I never faced that.
We could have the shootout at Mar-a-Lago, huh?
Finally. I know. I'm excited for that. That'll be on webcam. We'll see all that'll be fun. But yeah, I mean, everybody's kind of assuming that it's an easy thing to do, and ordinarily any other defendant, I guess it's not that hard. But if you have a friendly governor in Florida who thinks it's politically advantageous to shield you from arrest and extradition, plus you have Secret Service protection, although again, other people were saying he gave them all COVID. They might just say, take them. Who cares?
I don't know, but it's an interesting question.
All right. Well, maybe we'll ponder
I'll
that.
do some homework and figure it out.
Okay. Well, do take some time off over the weekend. You deserve it. Thanks for coming by. I appreciate it.
It's fun. Thanks for letting me talk.
Take care, and I hope everybody had a great Friday show, keeping you company during this holiday weekend. Tomorrow, the actual weekend, and hopefully you can all get some time off with just you and your pie, if that's necessary, if you need to find privacy, or you need somebody to share the pies with, call me up. I like pie for the most part. And now time to hand things over to Justice Putnam for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And cookbook, just the mention of a cookbook at this point making me a little bit ill. But don't worry about it. He's cooking up the great stuff that you don't even have to have saved room for. It goes down that easy. Stay tuned.
From networksradio.com, you have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
There is serious stuff going on. Of course, he's not done being evil, and justice will fill you in on the lame duck Trump administration now appealing a court order barring the expulsions of migrant children seeking asylum. One more insult for the migrant community and everybody who cares about them. Gee whiz. Stay tuned. We'll see you next week.